Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I am a 38-year-old female and I met my husband, Jared, 40, a couple of years back outside our children's high school. We were waiting outside to pick up our kids, Tate, 18, male, and Alicia, 17, female. That is when Tate's dad approached me and introduced himself. Being new to this neighborhood after a rough and long divorce, it was nice to be greeted by someone and to realize that someone is actually interested in you. So Jared and I start to talk, and I find out that Jared has gone through a divorce similar to mine. So our initial year was spent building a friendship and bonding over similar experiences. At this point, our children had no idea that we were friends, at least this close of friends. Well, the very next year, somehow, our bond became closer, and we eventually came to the realization that this bond isn't just some friendship bond. We were falling for each other, and although I was very hesitant at first, eventually I was able to come to realize that Jared was someone I could trust, or so I thought. After multiple conversations and a couple of dates, Jared and I began dating, and after about 8 months of the same, we revealed our relationship to our children. I should have taken the red flag from there itself, because as soon as we had sat our children down to reveal this piece of information, both of them told us how, although they didn't get along well, they would adjust in this together. It raised my concerns, but the concerns were shut down by Jared, as he was able to convince me that the misunderstandings between them were just due to their angsty teenage phase. Well, so I decided to go along with the relationship, and my daughter seemed to be happy with that as well. Jared and her had a decent relationship, and Tate and her would just stay away from each other. Honestly, although I would try to get them to do things together, it didn't really work out. And so I just gave up and gave them the space that they wanted. Honestly, this seemed to be working wonderfully, but I guess that was just me being blind. So eventually, Jared and I get married after a while of dating. We don't have a huge wedding, just a small ceremony with our loved ones present. During this time period as well, we made sure to sit our children down separately as well as together to make sure that they knew that they had the choice to voice their opinions. Then, too, the two of them didn't say much. My daughter especially seemed happy because she saw me happy, and once again, I thought all was well. So we got married and have been so since the past couple of years. And keeping this situation aside, I genuinely thought we had a pretty decent marriage. I thought Jared loved me. And of course, if he could love me, I thought he'd love my daughter as well, who was just an extension of me, or you could say a part of me. Unfortunately, that was far from the case, and I found that out from one of the worst ways possible during some of my most vulnerable moments. You see, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I had developed gestational diabetes, and most of the doctors had stated that it would go away once I gave birth to my daughter. My pregnancy was very tough. Being pregnant while being so young, and the pressure put onto me by my parents, and the lack of presence of my daughter's biological dad made everything so very difficult. So I guess after giving birth, this diabetes evolved into type 2 diabetes, induced due to stress, and calling it difficult to manage would be an understatement. I'm often in hospital due to how much the levels spike, and this has been the case for me most of my life. So it wasn't any different when Jared and I got together. Hell, ever since we got together, he would usually be the one to drive me to the hospital. This time wasn't any different either. I had started to feel very lightheaded, even with the medications, and decided to have Jared drive me to the doctors. There, they got my diabetes back on track and suggested to Jared and I a treatment that would help keep my levels on track more. The thing about this treatment was that it lasted about a week, and I would have to be transferred to another hospital that was an hour or two away. Honestly, out of desperation for help with this condition, I took them up on it, and right from the same hospital, I was driven to the other one. So my treatment started the very next day, and since Tate and Alicia had their first goings on, they couldn't really come to visit me. We would talk on the phone while my husband came to visit me in the hospital to update me about everything that's been going on every alternative day. Well, a week flew by like anything, and everything back home seemed just fine. So much so that I would talk to Tate where he'd tell me that he had a surprise waiting for me, a present of some sort. I was quite excited to see that as well. Everything went as planned, but one thing that happened was that we had misunderstood the discharge date. I was discharged on the seventh day itself, when we thought I was going to be discharged on the eighth day. So I didn't make any plans with my husband. I knew he'd be busy with our kids, and so I called up a friend who dropped me off at home. What I had on my mind was to surprise my kids like they wanted to surprise me, but the surprise I was greeted with as soon as I unlocked the door with the spare keys horrified me. I walked inside quietly, taking off my shoes, as I first heard my daughter weeping. My first reaction was to immediately walk in to check on her, but I was more shocked to hear her crying noises being followed with Tate laughing and quite literally bossing her to do the dishes better. I was already dumbfounded here, and being enraged would be an understatement, but boy, this was only the start. I stood there, hearing not only my husband, but his son commanding around my daughter to clean the house, telling her this is what she technically owed me for giving me diabetes and ruining all my previous relationships. Jared stood there talking about how proud I would be of Tate for cleaning and doing so much. It took every bit of me to not go inside and punch Jared, but I knew that wasn't what I needed to do. I first needed to go inside, take my daughter, and just drive us both as far as we could. That is exactly what I did. I walked inside, threw my bag on the floor, and grabbed my daughter, who was sitting on the floor, mind you all. I took her to pack up her things, and she ran to her room. The look of pure horror on Jared and Tate's face pretty much told me that they knew that they had screwed up. Big time. I said nothing. I know I should have, but honestly, I was so damn speechless that I just couldn't get myself to. I knew if I opened my mouth, the worst would come out of it, so I just told him to be ready to meet me at the court. Hearing this out put Jared into panic, and Tate had just stood there stunned. Jared immediately started justifying himself, telling me how they were just playing around, how this was just banter, blah, blah, blah. Apparently, it's my daughter who doesn't know how to take a joke because his son was just being mischievous. I told him to shut the hell up, told him that just because I was staying quiet, it didn't give him the right to spew out absolute garbage, and that seemed to shut him down. By that time, Alicia had come back too with her things, and we just left. I drove myself to my sister's house and first asked my daughter if she needed anything. She said she just needed some time to be alone and calm herself down before she could say anything. So we have given her a spare room where she is collecting her thoughts currently. As for me, I told my sister everything to the best of my abilities, expecting support after I told her I was going to the lawyers to file for divorce. But her response kind of conflicted with me. She told me that I should at least give Jared a chance to explain his side of the story, since so far he had been nothing but a good father figure to my daughter. Although I agreed with that, I know for a fact that even if this was a one-time thing, it was extremely wrong. And so I'm sitting here questioning my decision. What should I do here, Reddit? Any advice would be much appreciated. AITA? After reading all of your responses, I decided to first sit my daughter down and discuss this situation with her, rather than making my own decisions and coming to my own conclusions. Honestly, this was the best piece of advice because otherwise I wouldn't have known the full scene, and it was not pretty, to say the least. It was the same afternoon as the day I left my house with my daughter that she had come out for some snacks. We sat before the television in silence as she munched on her snack. I knew I wasn't going to probe into anything unless my daughter initiated, and well, as a couple of minutes had passed by, she started off by apologizing. I asked her what she was apologizing for, and the poor girl broke down crying, telling me how she really didn't want to yet again ruin the relationship for me. I was heartbroken hearing this, and it all clicked to me there and then. All the times she was happy for my relationship was just her adjusting through everything because she wanted me to be happy. I instantly held her close, telling her there was no way in the world I'd be happy if she was unhappy. We both had started crying at that point, and she started spilling out that Tate used to bully her all throughout high school, and when he found out that me and his dad were dating, it just made things so much worse. since now he had our relationship to hold over his head. And my daughter, vulnerable towards this topic, went along with whatever he told her to do since she didn't want to ruin our relationship. This fear of hers stemmed from the relationships of mine that ended because my previous partners had not been able to or not been wanting to take up a parental role in her life. This had caused about a couple of breakups and caused my previous marriage to end. I had tried my very best to keep my daughter away from all this, but as you all can see, I clearly didn't do a very good job. My daughter then went on to talk about how, although the beginning it was just Tate doing all this, it was in front of Jared often, and eventually, after about a year into our marriage, he had too joined into this relentless bullying and verbal abuse. My heart shattered hearing all of this, and I held my daughter in my arms as tight as I possibly could. I started to feel like a horrible mother for not being able to protect my daughter from the thing I wanted to protect her from the most. I'm not sure what steps I'll be taking from here, but for now, I have given my daughter a couple of days off from school. She has been going out with her friends and just relaxing these days until I can form a solid plan that will keep Tate and his dad away from her during school. We'll update you all once. I first decided to go to the lawyers and file for divorce. Thankfully, marrying so late, Jared and I had signed a prenuptial agreement, so I will have no problem in this divorce. My phone had been blowing up constantly, not just by Jared, but also by his side of the family for not giving him a chance. But then, when I spoke to his sister, she was mortified to know the entirety of the situation compared to the half-truth that Jared and Tate had told them. This caused a huge argument between him and his family, who want nothing to do with the two of them anymore. A lot of them had contacted us, in fact, to apologize for spamming us without knowing the full length of the situation. It was the same case for my sister, who I previously had a small argument with over this situation. It felt nice to be acknowledged. It really gave me the truth always prevails feeling. As for my daughter having to go to the same school as Tate, when I had first approached the principal about this situation, he had informed me that there isn't much he could do unless there was a formal police complaint. I knew it really wouldn't be fair for my daughter to have to just face this pathetic piece of crap of a person, so we lodged an official police report giving the cops all the details. Unfortunately, not a lot came out of it formally through the cops. Tate was only called to the station and was warned thoroughly. The real deal came when the cops showed up to their school. Tate was called outside in the middle of the class and was taken into the principal's office, where not only Alicia but multiple other girls were present and had accused him of bullying. Since this behavior wasn't limited to just one person, he was suspended for a whopping 2 weeks and a warning has been given to him. I think, by the way my daughter describes it, this has scared him enough to maintain his distance. So that's where we're at currently. The divorce is still under process. My daughter and I have moved houses and we're both into therapy. Jared still tries to contact us every once in a while, but I'm trying to manage that as well. I feel like for the span of 2 months, we have made some good progress, especially my daughter, but I know as a mother, I have a long way to go. A lot of things to fix, and I would like to thank you all for your amazing as well as eye-opening advice. NTA, file for a divorce. Don't listen to anyone. You'll ask 10 people, all those 10 people will give you 10 different pieces of advice. Deep down, you know what Jared did is wrong, so don't hesitate and take the first step in giving your daughter the justice she deserves. NTA, please get your daughter into therapy. Poor girl seems like she's gone through a lot. There's a lot of potential in her, and even if it's too late, you can still have her make the best of herself. I, 35, own my house outright thanks to an inheritance from my grandparents. My partner, 34, hates their job, and we're thinking of them moving in with me once their lease is up. My partner asked if, after they moved in, they could quit their job to reduce the amount of stress they're under. It would be very easy for me to support both of us, especially without rent, mortgage, and would allow them to either find a different job or do something they enjoy. I do enjoy my work, so I'm happy to keep working. I told them sure, but in exchange they would have to do 40 hours of chores. I said if there was 1 or 2 chores they absolutely hated, I wouldn't mind taking care of those, but since we had no pets or children and have no plans on getting any, it should be easy for them to take care of the rest of the chores by themselves. That way, we can both relax at the end of the day in a clean house. Besides, I honestly don't think there's even 40 hours of chores to do. I keep the house relatively clean by myself, and with a Roomba that runs daily, the only daily chore would be cooking and dishes. Laundry is once every week or two, depending on how much we would make. Bathrooms would be once every 2 weeks, dusting once a week, taking out trash once a week, etc. I pay a company to take care of the yard. The house isn't a mansion, and I'm able to get these chores done on my free days. So it should be more than easy to break up the chore list to 1 or 2 tasks a day, get everything done during the week, and still have plenty of time to relax the rest of the day. Of course, if they got a new job, I'd be happy to split things evenly. They threw a fit, saying I just wanted them to be my servant, and that chores should be split equally. I normally agree, but if one person is just hanging out all day and the other works, the person hanging out all day should do more of the house care so that the division of labor to actually run a home is more equal. I said if they didn't want to do the chores, we could keep them split, but they would have to keep working as well. I wouldn't pay for them. This upset them even more, and now they're giving me the cold shoulder. Am I the a-hole here? NTA, assuming what you mean is that they'd be expected to tackle all the chores, not necessarily 40 hours worth, like you mentioned, I doubt there would be enough chores to fill those 40 hours. You're allowed and wise to set expectations before having your partner move in with you, and these are very reasonable expectations. Nope. NTA. This is what a SAHP, P for partner, does. The earning partner works 40 or more hours to support the family, and the SAH does the housework. It's a division of labor. When the earning partner is at work, the SAH is also at work, and they must do as much of the housework as is possible during that time with reasonable breaks and meals. This is absolutely how this works. Otherwise, you're being taken advantage of. You're sharing housework, but only you are contributing financially. It's reasonable to refuse to support someone financially if they refuse to support you with housework. But this is a red flag, OP. Don't move them in and reconsider this relationship because they are making it clear what they want the future to be. NTA, do not let them move in at this point. They need to either have a job or contribute in another way. They are expecting you to support them with none of their own responsibilities. It sounds like they are nowhere near responsible enough to live with. I absolutely guarantee you will regret it if you let them move in.